And her name is Claire Ventura. And she is going to be taking this time now to share with you a little bit about her book, Claire Ventura.
Aloha. My name is Claire Ventura. I was born on Maui in Wailuku. I grew up in the area of ʻīao and ʻīao Valley. This is the book that I have written. It is called ʻīao, the Boy Warrior of Kahekili. This book took me 4.5 years of research and constant writing to get to the point where I felt I had told a story correctly, properly, and also with a very deep spiritual connection for the people to know about. My story tells of a young boy. His name is ʻīao, and he is recruited into the army of Kahekili. And he trains at the area of Waiʻehu with many other young men his age and a little older to be ready to fight in a battle. My story tells of the battle between Kamehameha of Hawaiʻi Island and Kalani Kupule of Maui. Kalani Kupule was the son of Kahekili. Kahekili was the chief of Maui. And that's why the title of my book is ʻīao, the Boy Warrior of Kahekili. My story starts off with the time of the birth of ʻīao, the boy ʻīao, who was born in ʻīao Valley. It follows his life as he grows up, and I write of traditions, Hawaiian traditions, and I also write of Kamehameha, who was born on the island of Hawaii. The two men are coincidentally linked throughout the entire story. Things that happen to the boy ʻīao are linked together with things and occurrences that happen to Kamehameha. There is a common thread that runs through my entire story. The common thread is the ka'ohu. The ka'ohu is the mist which travels down from ʻīao Valley every day and every night. There is a mist there that is ever present. My story talks of this mist. My story talks and tells of the significance of this mist, which lingers there until this very day. My story is a story that people need to know. So many people take things lightly when they go up to ʻīao Valley to swim and to have parties, not realizing the deeply significant event which happened there in 1790. In fact, in 1928, the county of Maui erected a plaque there at ʻīao, at the entrance to go up to the needle. And that plaque commemorates and remembers the battle, the horrific battle that took place at ʻīao Valley. Many lives were lost. Thousands of young Pualikoa died there. And this is my story. I feel it is important that people know what took place there so they have respect for the area, respect for the lives that were lost, respect for the Hawaiian culture, and understand and know the importance of Hawaiian history. The Hawaiian history of the people of Maui is embedded in those rocks and in that river, the Wailuku River, which courses its way down through the valley and ends at Pakokalo, where the encampment was stationed for these boys who were training to be soldiers. My story is powerful and unforgettable. My story has received many reviews of the highest honors. My story is important because I feel people need to know. I would like to tell you about my book. The book itself has 22 chapters. Chapter 1 is the story of the boy who is at the encampment. And being a young man, he looks out at the ocean and thinks to himself, what am I doing here? The reason why he feels that way was because he was recruited to be in the army, to be a pualikoa for Kahekili. It wasn't something he chose to be, it was just the way it was. So the chapter tells of his feelings of being here at this somewhat isolated beach area in Wai'ehu. And I personally took pictures of the beach there, although it is blocked off. The area there is blocked off by the county. I was still able to take photographs of the beach area from behind the guardrail areas. And my story here on chapter 1 is about his feelings. So that's an enticing invitation for the reader to find out, what is this about? Chapter 1 does that. Chapter 2 tells of the birth of Kamehameha. It was a secret time, and our ancestors, they knew that there was going to be a king born who was going to save them. There was a lot of turmoil and many small wars taking place. Many lives were being lost because there was no leadership. Alapai Nui was the king of Kona, and he feared the birth of this savior. He knew that there was going to be a king born who would be called the slayer of chiefs. The chiefs in the area on the Big Island feared this person who was going to be born. In 1758, a comet appeared in the sky the night that Kamehameha was born. Kamehameha was actually called Pae'a at birth. He was not called Kamehameha. He was born in the area of Waipio and Waimanu valleys. The night he was born, he was whisked away by his family guardians. They were the Naeole family, and they took the child as soon as he was born, and they ran with the child, Pae'a. They ran through the night, all up and down the coastline there, running away from the troops of Alapainui. This is all talked about and told of in chapter 2. It is a very, very interesting subject because the Naeoli family did manage to hide Kamehameha away in the Hawi area. This is why there is a statue in Hawi, the statue of Kamehameha, because people know that he was born and raised in that area. My story continues on with a common thread that runs through the entire story. There is a connection between Kamehameha and the boy warrior ʻīao. Although neither of them knew each other, there were many coincidences that occurred, such as the boy warrior ʻīao would wet his feet in the incoming tide every morning in Waiʻehu. At the same time, on the island of Hawaii, Kamehameha, who grew up in the Waipio Valley area, he himself would wet his feet in the incoming tide of the Waipio Ocean. There are many coincidences such as this which connect the two men. People who read my book tell me that they love these characters. They love getting to know the boy ʻīao. They love the fact that he grew up right there in the Wailuku area where I was born and raised. They love the fact that he helped his father in the taro fields, because the father had taro fields in the Waikapu area. A lot of people say Waikapu, but it is quite often pronounced Waikapu because it is an area of sacred water. I myself have learned a lot. I have learned a lot of Hawaiian history by reading the references that I used, by interviewing people. I have learned more than an average person because my intensity was so focused on getting this story completed. I researched 46 reference books, spoke to people, jotted down notes, visited places that I was unfamiliar with before I wrote this book. I had no idea of Upolu Point until I started to write this book. I had no idea of the significance of that particular area in relation to Kamehameha's canoes and their trip from that area straight across to the island of Maui when the plan was to defeat Maui troops. I had no idea until I wrote this book and did the research. I had no idea of what was involved. The more I got into reading and finding out about these events, the more I felt motivated to complete this story and to be able to share this story with the people of the world. I felt it was important that people know what took place here many, many years ago, which actually influenced what is happening right now in Hawaii. Many times throughout the book, throughout my story, I mention the overthrow of the Hawaiian monarchy. I talk about Kamehameha, becoming the king. I talk about his lifting of the Naha stone, which still sits to this very day in Hilo town in front of the Hilo Library. There are many incidents that I have written about, which I researched and found to be surprising because I had no knowledge of these incidents that had taken place. I really knew very little before I wrote this book. I would say that I do know a lot now, and I'm happy that I know a lot because I am able to convey what I know into my book so other people can read my story and know what took place on Maui in the year 1790. This was a final step before Kamehameha became the king of all of the islands. This was one of the dramatic battles that took place. It was a battle, but it was also a slaughter. Now, when I go up to ʻīao Needle, I look at the cliffs and I think about the many young boys who scurried up the sides of the cliffs, trying their best to avoid the cannons and the guns that were being fired at them. Many fell, many died in the river stream. I talk about the ka'ohu in my story. I write about it, and I know what took place there. It was total destruction. Kamehameha was on a mission, and he accomplished his mission. This story, this battle at Kepaniwai, is only one battle that took place in his final march to victory to become the king of all the islands. But this battle was one of the most decisive battles. The sad parts and pieces of this story is the suffering that these young boys had. Kamehameha's Pualikoa warriors, as well as the warriors of Maui, of Kahekili. Many died from gunshot wounds and cannonballs that struck them down. And many of the soldiers, Pualikoa, of Kamehameha died because of the skills that the Maui warriors had in being able to defend themselves. It is estimated that thousands of young boys died at the ʻīao stream. Whenever I go up to ʻīao, I sense this sacredness which lingers there to this very day. I needed to make sure and make certain that people knew about what took place there, so I wrote this story. I also wrote this story because of the fact that I grew up there in Wailuku. I experienced this ka'ohu, which comes down from ʻīao Needle every night. It cloaks the valley. There's no denying of it. There's a spiritual essence which lives in that ka'ohu. It is important, very, very important, that people know about what took place there. One of my main reasons for writing this story is because I wanted to immortalize a young boy soldier who was an example, a clear example of what life was like at that time, what was his life like. as a pualikoa, recruited to be a soldier, taken away from his family. My story is powerful, it's informative, and at the same time, it is lovely. I have taken photographs of the area, and these photographs are in my book. I have also finished and completed several paintings, which are also featured in this book. My own paintings that I painted, such as the ʻīao needle. These are my paintings. This entire work is my essence into the story because of my feeling of the importance of what took place there and my feeling of having to know that people know about this and understand and respect the area and respect the Hawaiian culture, respect the Hawaiian people. I would now like to share with you some of the writing that I have in my book. At the beginning of the book, I have written The River at ʻīao Valley. This is a fictional story based on historical facts about one of the bloodiest battles that ever took place in the history of Hawaii. I wrote my story in remembrance of the battle at Kepaniwai. I wrote this story so no one will ever forget the boys and men who lost their lives at Kepaniwai. I wrote my story because our spirits never die, and all of us are spiritually connected, each to each. I will read now about the valley, Ahupua'a of Wailuku Moku. The valley place of Wailuku, high above the central areas, gives a natural rise to the place that is called Kukae Moku, which means cloud supreme. This place is now simply called ʻīao, and this is the location of the ʻīao needle. It appears that since the beginning of time, streams always flowed right through the tall and sheer mountains of this area. The sides of these mountains drop down suddenly and dramatically. The area is lush and dense with greenery, as passing shadows of misty rain clouds always linger here. Hapu'u, tree ferns, spring up easily here, as do kukui nut trees and fragrant avapuhi keokea, the white ginger. The constant and never-changing color of this place is a verdant shade of deep green throughout the entire year. It was here, at this area of tall mountain crests and rich soil, that the terrible Battle of Kepaniwai took place. It was here, at this lofty, dream-like spot, where the streams ran strong during the times of heavy rains and cloudbursts. It was here that at one time there had been boundless joy, and soon there would be great sorrow. I want to tell you about Chapter 1, and I will read parts of Chapter 1 for you. Chapter 1 is called The Training Camp, and this is Waiʻehu Beach at Maui. The boy warrior. What am I doing here at this ocean place of Waiʻehu? The young boy ʻīao lamented as he emerged from his house, looked at his surroundings, and shook his head in disbelief at what he saw. His hale, stood firmly on the coral sand at this place of Kahekili, Maui. The boy stood there in front of his hale and looked at the morning sea. Chapter 1 talks about how he remembers his childhood. And I write here, as dawn broke over glistening water at Waiʻehu Beach, Maui, large white clouds drifted in from across the sea. ʻīao looked to his right side and he saw Haleakala Mountain. Seeing the large dormant volcano brought ʻīao a comfortable feeling of assurance, because he knew the sun most surely would rise soon and dominate the sky. He remembered that today would be another day of warfare training and tightening of the knots of his tools and slings. The boy ʻīao walked down to the water's edge and put his feet in the water. So comfortable he was and so easygoing. The water loved the boy ʻīao. This place known as Waiʻehu, with the large ocean-facing trees, the roughened waterline, of course coral sand, and thousands upon thousands of river rocks, was his home now. He had been recruited, and he was now at the camp along with thousands of other young men who were training to become soldiers. He had been recruited when he was just 12 years old. Kahekili himself came with his crew of recruiters and knocked at the door and said to ʻīao's parents, "We are taking this boy. He is going to be trained to be a soldier." Chapter 1 is the introduction to the life of ʻīao, the life he had with his family. I write about the family and the wives of the puʻalikoa who often visited the area and visited their family there who were being trained. I also write about Kahekili and how he was the chief of the Wailuku area. He was a fierce warrior. Kalani Kupuli was left in charge of this warrior camp, as Kahekili at this time was away from the island of Maui, which actually made it the perfect time for Kamehameha to invade Maui. My story in chapter 1 tells of how the boy sat here at the water's edge and remembered his childhood and how he watched the sun rise up, and he knew that there was a battle to come.